I've been having some very interesting conversations lately with both Gen Z missionaries and those who lead Gen Z missionaries, and hearing some really different perspectives. From the leaders, I'm hearing things like, this generation does not have a work ethic. When I was their age, I did whatever it took to get the job done. You're done when you're done. Or, why do they ask so many questions all the time? Why don't they just do what I'm asking them to do? Why so much pushback? Or, what is up with this lack of motivation? They seem to always want to do things on their terms when they want to, not to mention their obsession with mental health and boundaries. But hey, on the other side, from Gen Z missionaries, hearing things like, my leader cares way more about what I do than who I am. With them, it's all about produce and drive and work. And this is how people end up in burnout. I have seen enough leaders fail. I'm not going to be one of them, because God cares about me. He wants me to live a sustainable life. He wants me to take care of myself as I'm serving others so I don't end up in burnout. I don't want to lose my soul. I don't want to lose my family. Pretty sure that's not what God wants. Or is this it? Is this what being a missionary looks like? Is this all there is? Also, this generation is dealing with overwhelm more than any other generation we've seen before. So how can we help Gen Z and learn from them? Because they have some amazing things to teach us as well. And all you Gen Zers said, amen. So my guest today is Dr. Tim Elmore. He is a brilliant leadership expert. We've had him on before. We had to bring him back on. He's John Maxwell's former missions pastor and author of The Future Begins with Z. And he's about to answer that very question and drop some insights I had not heard before that I think are really going to profoundly change the way that you see Gen Z and relate to them. So, Gen Z, leaders of Gen Z, let's jump on into today's episode. Tim, it is so good to have you back with us. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, Stephanie, it's great. I look forward to this conversation. We always have a good time.
We do have a good time, don't we? I feel the same way. And we're going to have some more fun today as we talk about Gen Z and those who lead them. And Tim, I was thinking, I've had multiple conversations lately with missionaries, both Gen Z team leaders who are really struggling to understand one another. They all feel called, they're passionate, they want to work together, but there's just some clashes going on. There's one leader who is saying, I can't figure out if these Gen Zers are like just unmotivated or overwhelmed. I don't know what's going on. Then on the other side, you've got Gen Z missionaries saying, I thought being here on the field was going to be a totally different experience. And I feel like I'm just really butting heads with the people that I'm serving, and they expect so much from me. I mean, these two different perspectives. And I'd love to just even start by asking for you a personal question. Was there a moment in your own journey with Gen Z where you thought, okay, this generation's wired in a completely different way than past generations?
That's a great question. Well, I think we talked about this the last time we were together. I actually think I first noticed that I might need to change the way I connect with Gen Z when I felt like I was in front of 18-year-olds and it felt like a cross-cultural interaction. So missionaries everywhere will say, I understand that, but it was my own team that were 18, 19 years old. Some of them were interns, some were full-time staff. And they were saying no, to tasks that needed to be done. And I'm thinking, who says no to the boss?
Right.
But it's a new day. And by the way, here's what I understood along the way. I'm just going to cut to the chase. All behavior has a reason. All conduct has context that explains it. Even if you don't agree with them, just knowing why they might have said that or done that just helped me empathize more. So I will say right from the beginning, Stephanie, I am a believer in Gen Z. I am biased toward them, but not until I did this research that I really began to say, oh, of course you're different. So I'm ready for a conversation, but I just want to tell you listeners, you're about to hear a biased man who loves this next generation, even though they're different. Can I say, I just took over the conversation. I want to say something.
We love it.
I put in the very beginning of the book that I chuckle at every time I read those words. Here it is. Generation Z is the sandpaper on my leadership I did not know I needed.
That's so great.
Isn't that good?
I do love that quote.
It was a friend of mine that said it. I said, Teresa, can I use that phrase? Gen Z is the sandpaper little friction there on my leadership that's
Yes.
polishing me up. They will make us better leaders because they won't put up with some stuff that
Mm.
we maybe did 15, 20 years ago, and we shouldn't have. But now they will say, no, no more. And I think we're going to need to do some changing. So,
You're so right, and those tensions really do provide an opportunity. And you have so many great things you mention in your book, and I love the title too. The future starts with Z. It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
it's so great, and
Well,
there's so many things that we'll get into that you mentioned of ways that that sandpaper can really sharpen leaders, and for Gen Z, how to be really kind
yes,
sandpaper all
that's
at
right.
the same
That's right.
time.
Nice sandpaper. That's right.
Yeah, and Tim, what were some of the things that begin to shift your perspective from that initial sandpaper to,
Yeah,
oh, I think there's
yeah.
something good here that could happen?
Well, early in the book, I share this story. I use a term that I've not heard anybody else use yet. It's called the Peter Pan paradox. Now, authors have used the term Peter Pan before, talking about a generation that doesn't want to grow up. But the Peter Pan paradox is, I think, is something new that they bring to us on the job, okay, as missionaries or wherever they work. Here it is. Well, first of all, we know you know the character Peter Pan, right? He was in
Yes.
that whimsical character in the book and the play, and then the Disney movie that came out years ago. Peter Pan is this amazing boy that can fly through the air, do magical things, sprinkle pixie dust, and make things happen like nobody else can. The other side of the coin is he wants to live in Neverland where nobody has to grow up. We can stay a kid and not be responsible. So you see what I'm saying? There's a plus and a minus.
Yes.
There's something magic and tragic going on in this character. Here's how I say it in the book. Consider this, listeners. The age of authority is decreasing, but the age of maturity is increasing. And that in
Hmm.
itself can be frustrating. So let's talk about both of those things for 1 minute. The age of maturity is going down. So they're coming in with a savviness to smart technology, to AI, to where the future's going. They have intuition on culture. I'm asking them all the time around our office, what do you see coming? What do you see coming? So there is that going on. The age of authority without any position is going down. But at the same time, those interpersonal skills, those soft skills, those people skills that we think are important to the kingdom, they're not always there because they were on a screen all through high school or whatever. So you can see those two things together just create a tension that you don't do away with praise God, you can't do that. So here's my marching orders for everybody listening right now. If you turn this thing off now, here's two things I want you to hear. Because of the age authority, age of maturity factors, we are going to have to listen to them more than we used to listen. And we're going to have to coach more than we used to coach. If we're
Mm.
psyched up for that, I think we're going to be fine.
That's so good. And I want to keep unpacking that a little bit more. First, I want to ask you, what are some of the things that you're hearing from leaders and hearing from Gen Zers as they're struggling sometimes to communicate with one another?
Yeah. Well, I'm chuckling because I'm hearing lots of crazy stories, and I'm now going to self-select the ones that aren't too derogatory on both sides. On both sides. I mean, there's frustration on old and young. So,
Yeah.
an old person listening, just know they're saying the same stories about us. So, I have a dear friend that hired a Gen Zer, 22 years old, right out of college, smart as a whip. She started coming in late to meetings, and they thought, maybe she just used to the college classroom where you could come in late. And that sure enough was true. She had never been in a full-time job. Then she just seemed to disengage with her department or her team. She wasn't really present, even though she was physically there. And when her supervisor eventually met with her and said, tell me what's going on, she felt attacked. This is not psychologically safe here. I feel I'm being attacked. And all he was wanting to do was call her up to be the best version of herself. I mean, we all know
Yeah.
that as leaders, you got to be challenged. And that's what leaders do. So, one big difference, and I do not mean to stereotype, is they're coming in from a very different world where maybe they've never had a full time job before. In fact, do you mind if I derail us just for a moment?
Do it.
I began to research work itself. And work and childhood was so different 100 years ago. First of all, 4-year-olds were doing age-appropriate chores around the house. 9-year-olds were working the farm, and by 11, they were leading a chore on the farm. So it was very, very different.
Yeah.
By 1936, President Roosevelt put some child labor laws in place, as he should. Some kids were being abused in factories and worked too much and so forth. But those took effect after World War II because we went to war in World War II. So by the 1950s, those laws began to really take effect. But what it did was it put students with each other in a classroom more than with adults at work. Even though we might have worked a fast food restaurant, it was part-time, we were with other 16-year-olds. So the fact that their work experience might be very little. Now they watch 17 YouTube videos about work or something like that, but I mean, it just builds a little empathy, doesn't it? That doesn't excuse it,
Yeah.
but it does explain it. So I just feel like we're going to need to know. I need to start really at the beginning with some of these fundamentals, pass, dribble, shoot. If I'm teaching the game of basketball to them. So I'll stop there, but I just think everybody listening, if you're leading a Gen Zer, just know I need to back
Yeah.
up, not assume anything. And then if they know, hallelujah, that's great. But if they don't, you may need to explain. You need to look me in the eye and not use a screen, and you need to talk to me. I'm willing to talk. I want to talk, but let's talk. So, yeah.
No, you bring up great points, Tim. I work as a leadership coach and have for years, and I would say probably half my clients are not very much not Gen Z, leading Gen Z,
Yeah.
and they constantly like this is something they want to process. Like,
Yeah.
I'm frustrated. They're
Yeah.
unmotivated. They're not showing up. They take these mental health days.
Yeah.
Like they don't even care. They don't seem to care about work, and it's real frustrations.
Yeah.
And it's so good to hear those out. So for all of you listeners who are leading Gen Zers, we hear you, we see you. It's
Yeah.
real what you're feeling, and as Tim, as you're pointing out, there's some other things behind it. And so I think that's what we'll get into a little later on is
Yes.
how
Okay.
to pull them out, how to pull them up as you're
Yeah.
wanting to as leaders, and really take advantage of the best that they have to offer and train them in some of the areas where they're weak. And so as you're talking to Gen Zers, what are you hearing from them, Tim?
Well, they can be as frustrated with us because they're not familiar with the workaday world. And they're going, why would you do it that way? Why would you not do it this way or whatever?
Yeah.
So let me give you a quick story that I tell early in the book that I think sets the stage for this answer. I have known Colin Webb since he was in high school some years ago. He was a very smart high school student. So he was invited to come to MIT for college, which not a bad gig. So he goes 4 years to MIT, served in student government all 4 years. You can imagine when he graduated from MIT, he had several job offers. So Colin decided to go to Detroit, Michigan, and work at one of the big three, General Motors, one of the big three automakers. Well, they put him in the smart car division. He's a smart guy. But months into the job, he sees so many things that could be done better. After all, he's young and has some ideas. But he was right. I mean, he said, oh my gosh, they weren't doing any professional development. They could do PD better. They could do this system better. That strategy could be improved. And so he takes these ideas to his supervisor, doesn't realize how off-putting that might feel for a 22-year-old to bring to a 48-year-old these brilliant ideas that he had. Well, Stephanie, his supervisor just said, hey, buddy, you just need to keep your nose to the grindstone, keep your head down, and do your work. Well, Colin said, yes, sir, but he knew these were good ideas. So get this. Colin writes the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra, sends her an email with these good ideas listed out. She gets back to him. This was shock of all shocks. She replies and goes, these are really good ideas. Let me take these to my executive team. She takes them to her exec team and they all agree. These are really good ideas. But as the ideas get pushed down the org chart, you can imagine they begin to die on the vine. As it gets to his supervisor, once again, he hears, hey, buddy, just do your work. In fact, he told Colin, you have to be here 8 years before you get to lead anything. That's how old school, and with all due respect to GM, great car company, just old school. So here's the tragic part of the story. Colin doesn't even quite stay a year. He quits They lost this sharp young man. He has since become an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur. He started 3 companies, sold one of them. He's doing quite well.
Wow.
And I would just say, I think they both missed out on something, even though Colin's doing fine and GM's going to make it. But they need those 20-somethings because they have visibility on the future. The age of authority
Yes.
is going down. And Colin's a great example of that, I think. Yeah.
That's a really powerful story. I think that illustrates just the miscommunication,
Yeah.
misunderstanding on both sides. You know,
Yeah.
as you're talking to Tim, I'm thinking about Gen Zers as a generation worldwide. So for our listeners, we're going to have our Gen Zers who are missionaries, who are becoming missionaries.
Yes. Yes.
And then we've got 2 other categories that I'm thinking of. One would be Gen Z MKs. So
Okay.
they were
Yeah.
raised overseas. That would be, my daughters. And I'm thinking of some of the ways in which she classically fits into Gen Z and other ways in which not so much, because she's,
yeah, that's right.
that third culture kid. So she's got a really strong work ethic, very motivated. And obviously we're making blanket statements that are, I don't want to say blanket statements, but we're generalizing for the sake of connecting with people. But then I'm also thinking about Gen Zers too, who are maybe not from the US or a Western culture, who are having jobs when they're kids and how that might be impacted. So talk a little bit about the differences between the different types of Gen Z.
Yeah. Well, those 3 you just listed are all true, and there are exceptions to every rule. So listeners, we talk now not to stereotype, but to understand.
Yes.
So I just did an article where I talk about the 3 kinds of workers: white collar, blue collar, and no collar. Okay, there's a lot of no collar, right? They got a T-shirt on and they're on tech and they're coming up with some app that they're going to monetize and become millionaires by 23 years old.
Right.
So, and I say that tongue in cheek, but just like in every generation, there are different personalities and styles and types and preferences. So I believe we need to practice an acronym that I put in the book. If you're about to, let's say, interview a Gen Zer for a ministry or a job, I put an acronym for PERKS, PERKS. I think we understand perks far too late in the job, and we need to understand them on day one. So let me tell you what perks stands for. The letter P tells me or reminds me I need to understand their preferences. They come in with preferences. They're very audacious. They have a high sense of agency when they come in, and they'll say no. And they'll say, I need a mental health day, like you just referred to. So when I ask for preferences, I'm finding out, I wish this were true. It's not a deal breaker if it isn't true, but I would like this to be true. And maybe we go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I think we can do that. But it's good to find that out right away. The letter E is expectations. That's a little stronger than preferences. Mm-hmm. Now they're sharing, I'm assuming this will be true. And I think the first day, maybe the first week, we should find that out. Think about a workplace that finds that out a year later, and there's division in the department because there's gossip and rumors and bitterness and anger because we didn't talk about it before. So expectations are, well, we just need to find them out now. Here's my theory on that one. Conflict expands, Stephanie, based on the distance between expectations and reality.
Yes. That's good.
So I may have even shared this last time we were on. I'm so enthralled by this notion. If I tell my wife I'm going to be home by 7 for dinner and I get home at 10 after 7, not a big deal. If I get home at 9:30, we have a long conversation about that. And it isn't that she couldn't live without me for 2.5 hours because I have an expectation. This is huge. Life is about managing expectations. And on the mission field, I'm telling you, you're going to have a lot of surprises. We tell short-term workers, expect the unexpected. Everything's going to happen different. But I'm telling you, the more you can cross that bridge up front and just share with them and find those things out, the more surprises you'll remove from the experience, which is a good thing.
Yes. And Tim, I have to mention, you were a missions pastor for a while. So you know what you're talking about in the missions world for sure.
We did. I worked with John Maxwell, believe it or not. And for years I was missions pastor. We were trying to plant churches and unreached people groups. And it was so much fun, but so much work. But even then we had very different young missionaries from the older
Yeah.
counterparts. So this gap has been around for a long time.
Sorry, I
Okay,
took you off of
that's okay.
perks. Let's get back to perks.
Letter R, requirements. This is something that I've seen today that I've not seen in past generations. They come in with some demands and requirements of this workplace. And wouldn't you think with me, I better find those out during the interview because I might have to say, I'm so sorry, this is never going to happen here. Can I just usher you
Yeah.
to the door and say, I'll pray for you? Because that's just not going to happen here. But some of their demands are good. You just wish here's what I wish. I wish they wouldn't put a preference in the language of a demand. Sometimes they come in
Yeah.
with hyperbole or 3 exclamation points on the text message, all caps. And I'm going, do you really feel this strongly about this? So I think both sides need to temper our emotions. But if it's a requirement, that's good to talk about it now and see if that's even possible. All right. So
Mm.
preferences, even stronger as expectations, even stronger as requirements. The next letter is something I wish somebody would have done with me early on. The word is keys, the keys to their heart. I think we need to not talk all the time about the workload and the work we're going to do together and the 9 to 5 hours. I want to find out what makes you tick. Do you like dogs? You like sports? What is it that
Yeah.
makes you really tick? When I find that out, now I can talk to my people, not just about work things, but hey, did you go to the game last night or how was the rodeo or whatever? You know what I'm saying? Keys to their
Hmm.
heart is crucial, I think, in my opinion, for leaders.
And I
And
would
then the
agree.
one,
I hear a lot of times from Tim. I hear Tim from talking to Gen Z leaders. Or I'm sorry, not Gen Z leaders. I hear from talking to Gen Zers. Sometimes I feel like they want me for the work that I can do, and they care more about what I do than who I
yeah,
am. And so this
yeah,
really addresses that. That's powerful.
yeah, I think it does. In fact, later, I'd really like to talk to you about how the old view authority and how the young view authority. It's different. And if we don't know that, we
Yes.
can be ambushed by the young or the old, if we depending on who we are. Okay, so the last letter in perks, the letter S, is salary. Sometimes that doesn't get thoroughly talked about until it's a little late in the game. But I think it's important. Gen Z comes in ready and wanting to talk about that more than past young generations. I was just happy to be there.
Yeah.
Intern, $200 a month. Fine, that's great. But I think we need to be ready to talk honestly about that and say, I wish it could be more. You certainly deserve more. I think I do too, that sort of thing. And then just say, let's make this cause our our compensation until we can continue
Yeah.
to raise more money. Anyway, those items, that was probably more than you bargained for in my answer
No,
there,
I loved them.
are just helpful conversations that I am learning. Have them earlier rather than later in the relationship.
And that acronym is fantastic for both sides because for our
Yes.
Gen Z listeners, they
Yeah,
can go in having thought through PER, the preferences,
that's
expectations,
right.
and requirements beforehand. And like you said, being able to put them in the right category. And
Yes.
maybe for them, they can take those to somebody
Mhm.
of a different generation, like a trusted
Yeah,
mentor, and say, hey, am I categorizing these right? And somebody might be able to say, hey, that can't be a
yeah,
requirement.
yeah,
That's not
yeah,
going to fly. But
right.
thinking it through beforehand would help them to be able to communicate that. And then I'm thinking for the leaders interviewing them, thinking through how to structure that in an interview so you're really
Yes.
hitting all those things well. I mean, that's really good. And that's why I really do encourage people to pick up the book because you go into all this just into so much more depth on all of this for people who want to really put this into place. So, and I'd love to go back a little bit now to some of these differences that you've talked about. How and why do these generations see the world so differently? Where's that
Yeah.
sandpaper coming from?
Yeah. Well, one place I think we can most assuredly get to right away is social media. We
Yeah.
spend time in echo chambers. So my kids are on different social media platforms that I'm on naturally. So I think the last time we talked about generations, I made the statement that the screens that are in our life from my childhood to now went from public to private. So when I was a
Mhm.
kid, we had one screen in our family room. It was a TV, and we all gathered around and watched something together and talked together about the show.
Same.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now we have one screen, but it's in our hands, And
Yeah.
mom and dad are on a completely different set of content than their
Yeah.
child is. So that's one big reason we see things differently. But here's another. Think about Gen Z looking at the world, which they're able to do through this iPhone.
Hmm.
They see failing leaders everywhere.
You're right.
I mean, everywhere. Now, there's some successful ones too, no doubt about it, in the church, in the corporate world, in the government, in education. But they hear stories about failing priests and pastors. They hear about failing corporate America and greedy corporate America. The healthcare
Mhm.
system, oh my gosh, that's broken. Government, oh, don't even start there. The average age of Congress, I think, is in their
Mhm.
70s. So they see leaders failing and go, well, I don't want to be that. So get this. Of course, they don't have a natural respect for leaders. They see so many that didn't earn that respect. You follow me? Whether that's right or
Yeah.
not, or biblical or not, they just have a hard time respecting authority. So I would say, here's another pithy phrase, Stephanie. We
I
need
love
to
them. Bring them
earn
on.
our authority through a bridge, not a badge. Meaning we're building a bridge to them and to their heart
Mm.
and building a relationship. Remember what Brene Brown said? It's hard to hate people up close. So I just believe, even though they work with you, missionary leader, get to know them. Just and forget talking about ministry for a while. Just talk about their heart and they do love Jesus, but talk about a bunch of other things.
Mhm.
I'm telling you, you'll win them over. So I told you earlier, Stephanie, I want to talk about authority. I see two
Yes.
columns in my head. And listeners, I'm going to give you these two columns now verbally, even though I can't do it visually. Older generations tend to see your position gives you authority, right? You got a badge, you're the president, you're the chief of whatever, and that gives you authority. They would say connection gives you authority. Connect with me. And we wouldn't disagree with that as Christ followers, but I got a badge on, Bob, Robert or whoever. So here's another one. We would say you need to be listening to the man at the top. And by the way, Stephanie, as you know, very often it's a man at the top. You need to be listening to the man at the top. They would say the man at the top needs to be listening to us. We have visibility on the future. I don't know that he does at 58. Um, we would say, the older might say, well, the boss's idea is the idea that wins. They would say the best idea should win. And I think we can all see merit in this, right?
Yeah.
The last one I'll give you real quick is because I'm older and I was raised a certain way, tend to see the leader as a gatekeeper of the power. And they would say the leader should be a guide, not a gatekeeper. So you're
Mm.
guiding me. Don't use your position. If you have to use your position, Mr. Elmore, you're probably not leading really well.
Mm.
So that reminds me, I need to toss for at least a moment the degrees I have and the certificates I've won and the badges I have and the position, and just be a person with a little bit more experience and a lot of love for them and belief in them. Um, I always remind myself, I don't know much about the future, but I know one thing: Gen Z is going to be there. So I want to
Yes,
make
they
sure I'm
are.
investing in the inevitable. So anyway, I'll stop there, but that would be some.
No, so good.
Yeah.
So good. And positional leadership has never really been great. It's never
Yes.
been an awesome way to lead, but
No.
Gen Z just doesn't let you get away with it. You might have been able to get away with it a little bit in previous generations, but they're
Yeah.
like, nope, that's not going to fly. And so, as you said, they bring in some really good things that I
Yeah.
think are needed that make other generations better. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is you point out in the book that Gen Z can be cognitively advanced, but
Yes.
behind socially and emotionally.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about how that imbalance shows up on mission teams or
Yeah.
in any space.
Sure. So when educators measure maturation, they usually have four categories. We would add a fifth. So it's biological growth, okay, cognitive growth, social, and then emotional. We would add spiritual as well.
Yeah.
They're showing up as a generation, 59 million Gen Zers in America, even more worldwide. In fact, worldwide, they are the largest generation anywhere. So
Wow.
again, invest in the inevitable. They're ahead cognitively. They're showing up. Well, they've stuffed more information in their head as children than ever before. They're smart. So cognitively, they're ahead. Biologically, they're ahead. Think about, listeners, your children. They're going to enter puberty at younger ages. Girls are going to have their first period younger, and boys are, it's just all, whoa, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So all of that might lead you to believe, oh, they're mature. No. They might be 6'2" and 215 pounds, but still be a little boy socially and emotionally. Maybe, not always, but maybe. So we're really attempting to go after the building of their social and emotional intelligence. And missionaries on the field, I would encourage you. You want them to grow spiritually, no doubt about it. But I would say invest in their emotional intelligence, their self-awareness, their self-management, their social awareness, their relationship management. Those are critical, and they can be grown.
Yeah. And what are some ways they can invest in that?
Coach Ben here. Are you a missionary? Are you trying to find next steps to becoming one? Well, Modern Day Missions, we're a payment processor for missionaries just like you. You may be thinking, like, payment processor, what is this guy even talking about? So let me break it down. We make it simple for you to receive donations and for your donors to give. It's as easy as that. As the largest independent missions organization in the U.S., we currently serve more than 1,100 missionaries across the globe, helping missionaries get on the field and freeing them up to do what matters the most, what God's called them to do. Now you may be thinking, this guy isn't so crazy after all. It kind of sounds like he's talking about me. Well, I want you to know we're always thinking about you and how we can best serve you. So we want to connect you to resources designed to help you flourish, like this podcast you're listening to right now, and a full-time staff that's dedicated to helping you with your admin, and free access to me, a fundraising coach, among many, many other things. So don't take my word for it. Check out everything at modernday.org. It's right here. It's pinned to the corner. Just click that link. And like I said, it's free, and we'd love to serve you. Now, I know you're here to listen to Stephanie talk, not me, so let's get back to the episode.
Well, I think one is Gen Z, by and large, has seen truckloads of video, right? So they'll YouTube something and learn how to do whatever, but they watch the video. I think practice is huge. So let me tell you how we implemented this in our home, my wife, Pam, and I, okay? We have two millennial kids. They're both in their 30s. We adore them. They're both gainfully employed, and we are proud. Now, Gen Z, well, no, I won't go to Gen Z yet. Let me just go. As we were growing up, we would have conversations at the dinner table about our children growing their emotional intelligence. I mean, at 8 and 12 years old, we're introducing this term to them and talking about this. Well, we were noticing, my wife and I were noticing, they thought they had mastered that at 5th grade. You know, this is, we know, we got this, almost like memorizing scripture, but never practicing scripture, you know. So Pam and I thought, no, they have not mastered this. They think they have. So here's what we did. We turned it into a practice. Pam and I said one dinner, we said, in a week and a half, we're going to have a party at this house. And your mother and I are going to invite our adult friends. And Bethany and Jonathan, you're going to host the party. And by that, you're going to answer the door. You're going to take their coats. You're going to ask them if they'd like some iced tea. You're going to make sure they've met each other. If it looks like they don't know each other, blah, blah, blah. Well, our kids both said, oh my gosh, this is such a stupid idea. But you know what they learned to do? They learned to do all those things. Hi, Mrs. Smith. Have you met Mr. Johnson? Could I take your coat? Would you like some iced tea? By the end of the night, they were exhausted. You know how hosting a party is exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
So we had a debrief time after that, actually the next day, because it was midnight. And they realized they hadn't mastered EQ after all. This emotional intelligence thing is harder than they thought because it wasn't just cognitive. So there was a case, cognitively advanced, social emotion. They hadn't done it yet. Listeners, we're going to have to introduce exercises and practices where we're not just memorizing Bible verses. Do that. But get out off your butt and do it. Yeah. And when we do it, then we realize evangelism is much harder than we thought it was. Am I right about that? Mm-hmm. Oh my God. So I know I'm preaching to the choir now, but I think that's what maybe we didn't get to Gen Z as well as we could have, as parents, as leaders, as teachers, as youth workers. And now we need to introduce it to them as they're young workers on the field today.
You know, and I'm thinking of missionaries who are raising MKs right now.
Yes.
What a great opportunity they have. I mean, that was one of the things that I think was really helpful to us for our kids, was involving them in that process of hosting mission teams. As you have adults coming down, including them in the conversation, like you said, having them help and set the table and bring things in and translate for a team. And all of those are really good ways to help them feel valued, as long as you're not just, I mean, I've also seen parents who just throw their kids in the water, kind of scar them a little bit, and then they're like, I'm never going to be a missionary again. So I think there's ways to do it. But when they feel a part of that team and you really pull on their gifts, it's remarkable. And, I'm with you. I love Gen Z. That's my kids' age. So I love them. I love their friends. And one thing I've really noticed about Gen Z is because they are on their screens so much, and everybody really is more nowadays. When I sit down and have a conversation with them, even though sometimes it can be awkward in the beginning, sometimes yes, sometimes no, depending on the personality of the person, they, with some really good strategic questions that go beyond just the simple small talk, they just bloom like a flower because they aren't listened to very much nowadays. And so going back to your key, the K in your acronym,
that's right.
When you can just hear them and listen to them, they just soak it up like a sponge. And it for me, some of my very favorite conversations are with Gen Zers. And then you get to actually hear some of the deep stuff going on inside of them. And it's fascinating. I have learned so much from them. So there's so much that we can do. So I love that story you shared about your kids too. There's another acronym, because we love acronyms, right, Tim? They're the best. And you have one, COPING, that you talk about. Can you walk that through, what that means and how you see that playing out among young leaders?
Yeah, sure. So the word coping is simply a meta-analysis on the data on Gen Z, where I try to help someone wrap their arms around what's the data. So COPING, the letter C reminds me that as a generation, with some exceptions, they're a little cynical, not unlike Gen Xers were back in the day. A little, I mean, and look around you. I might be cynical too if I was 19 years old right now.
Right.
So a little jaded, a little cynical. They know the dirt on everyone thanks to social media. So they're cynical. The letter O, overwhelmed. 94% of university students in America tell us that the number one word they use to describe their life is the word overwhelmed. 94%. 44% say, I'm so overwhelmed it's difficult to function. And nearly 1 in 10 has thought about suicide in the last year. Now, maybe they didn't pull out a weapon, but it crossed their mind. It might be easier to end it all than to face what I have to face. So just know they may be coming in. You referred to this word earlier. They might be coming into the mission field just overwhelmed, and I don't know what to do with them because I dare not give them another task. They might melt, that sort of thing. The letter P is pragmatic. They're far more pragmatic than their millennial predecessors. In fact, millennials were kind of idealistic, let's change the world by noon on Friday, Gen Z, they have that in them because they're young, but way more pragmatic and practical. And maybe their jadedness comes in at this point, but they know the world is a hard place, that sort of thing. The letter I, inclusive. This is by the way, some of these are great and some of them are not so great. They are the most inclusive generation of all the generations alive right now, old and young. Now that means racial equity, justice for all, for the marginalized. This is the heart of Jesus right there. So this is not a bad thing. Capitalize on the strengths. And this is one of them. They are very, very, very inclusive. N, nuanced. Now, by nuance, what I mean is, here we are putting them in categories. I would say, don't put them in categories. Nuanced means that realities change. And so we need to make sure that we write in pencil, not ink, when we describe them. So here's a good example. Gender preference that may be changing as they go through their adolescent and young adult years. This has become a thing on university campuses. I just talked to a Division I NCAA coach that said, well, one of the young ladies on our softball team identified as a woman in the fall, but a male in the spring. What locker room should I send them to? What do you think? This is a problem we didn't have when I was in college. So nuanced means shifting, changing. I think we need to help them get a clear sense of identity. We all know that, and it should be in Jesus. But I'm telling you, it was hard for me as adolescents because I was an adolescent. It's even harder today with a variety of 50 some different gender preferences, and it's all
Yeah.
nuanced and so forth. So just know you don't like it and you don't agree with it, but you don't have to. This is their reality, and you love them as they come. Jesus didn't make somebody clean up before they took a bath. So that's the letter N. The letter G is globally savvy. They are global citizens. They have, friends in the Philippines and all over the place. And I'm sure your kids, Stephanie, would vouch
Yeah.
for this, but very, very, very global. In fact, they know what's going on globally at 12 years old if mom gave them a smartphone. So just know they're a lot more savvy than we might give them credit
Mm.
for being. That is a quick look at Gen Z that makes me have a heart for them, and it makes me want to capitalize on what they bring to the table. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great acronym because Tim, it really hits on some of the, like you said, the more challenging parts and some of the really good parts. So it's a good acronym. And I want to come back to O for a second there, that
Yeah.
overwhelm. We hinted
Yes.
at this earlier, but that mental health, it's a
Yeah.
huge deal to Gen Z. And sometimes you can really feel the tension there because other generations can feel like, what's up with this obsession with mental health and mental health day and my emotional health? And I can't do
Yeah.
that because that, and for them, it feels very like, ugh. And for a Gen Zer, they're going, hey, you haven't taken care of yourself.
Yeah.
Old
Yes.
boomer, they call every boomers,
Yeah.
boomers. So you guys are all, your family's going to fall apart. You guys are going to burn out and you're
Yeah.
going at this crazy speed, but I'm not going to live my life that way. God wants me to be staying on the field and live sustainably. And so I'm going to do it in a good way. And so again, you see where the tension comes in. How are you seeing mental health playing out between the two?
Well, it's very much what you just said. They look at older generations and say, I don't want to be that. You know,
Yeah.
dad ruined our family when he left mom and overworked too much or whatever, whatever. But you're right, even on the mission field, maybe the family's still together, but they saw workaholism and said, I'm going to react to that by being
Mm-hmm.
balanced or something other than that. So it's good for me to know that because I tend to love my work and I know I modeled working a lot for my children. So that's one thing. The other thing, though, is because the stigma is slowly leaving us for seeing a counselor for mental health
Mm-hmm.
reasons, anxiety, panic attacks, depression, those are huge issues and they have been normalized now. It's not just that marginalized kid over there from a broken home, it's any kid, even
Yeah.
privileged kids that have a lot of money. So I think the first thing we need to do is empathize with them, even if you don't like it and you have to tell yourself to be quiet in your brain. Empathize with it because it is an overwhelming world, and it would be for us too if we were a teenager or
Mm-hmm.
a 22-year-old. But here's the opposite side of the coin, Stephanie, that I don't hear anybody talking about, but we need to, because they're growing up with these terms, mental health and psychological safety and all these things that
Yep.
ought to be happening. Because they're young and their brain is still forming, they can weaponize some of those terms. So I know two friends that own companies here in the Atlanta area that said, ooh, I need to sit down with my Gen Z employee and give them some corrective feedback. Well, both Gen Zers said, oh, this is not a psychologically safe place. You're attacking me. Well, they weren't attacking them. They're giving corrective feedback, which we all need, including me,
We
even at
do.
my age. So you see how the pendulum can swing from one extreme to another. It's quite
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. So what we need to do is say, let me define psychological safety. It means both sides and all sides can be honest and transparent, employee to boss and boss to employee, without getting fired or without being cut down or insulted. But it means we can have candid conversations. And some of you listening right now, I'm guessing you need to have a hard conversation with another team member, maybe a younger team member, and you need to make sure that you bring some definition to psychological safety, but then say, because we love each other, we're going to speak the truth in love. So anyway, I'll stop there. I'm probably waxing eloquent right now, but I
No,
think,
that's really good. It's really
yeah,
relevant too.
yeah, I think so. It is for me.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and okay, there's also these three questions that you mentioned that I thought were really powerful that Gen Z wrestles with. I won't steal your thunder. I'll let you say them.
So these three questions are age-old questions. Kara Powell at Fuller Seminary even talks about them, but I think they're fundamental to every young generation, not just the new ones today. So young people are asking themselves, who am I? So what's my identity? Where do I belong? What's my community? And then what difference do I make? What's my purpose? And I think especially in faith-based places like we're in, we ought to be helping them answer those questions overtly,
Yeah.
not implicitly, but explicitly. And part of that is our gifts used on a field, somewhere in maybe a cross-cultural setting. But isn't it true? We need to answer those questions. If we turn 45, 50, 55 years old, we still haven't, we're not whole people yet. We need to continue to fight for those answers. So I'll stop and let you volley back if you want to.
Yeah, no, and as you said, those are important questions for everybody, but Gen Z is really leaning into them
Yeah.
so well. And in making a difference and stepping out in that, it makes me think too of some things you've referenced in that they want to have the chance to share things with their leaders. And
Yeah.
you mentioned this term that I hadn't heard before, Prefigurative Society by
Yeah.
Margaret Mead, where young people are the ones teaching their elders.
Yeah.
What does that look like practically as a leader? How can I receive from a Gen Zer? And for Gen Zers, how can you present that in a way that's going to be well received? You hinted at this a little bit with the story,
Yes. Yes.
how to not do it. How could you maybe do that well from both sides?
Okay. If you'll allow me to geek out just a little bit here.
Always.
Okay, Margaret Mead was arguably the most famous anthropologist of the 21st century. Most missionaries have said, oh yeah, I've read Margaret Mead. She said something just before she passed away in the 1970s that I think is coming to pass right now. She said human history, first and foremost, can be divided up into three societies or three periods of human history.
Okay.
The post-figurative society, the co-figurative society, and then the pre. And we're in the pre today, okay? So here's how she would say it, if I can speak from Margaret Mead. Thousands of years ago, in the agrarian cultures that existed, we lived in a post-figurative world, meaning if you're a young person growing up then, you're going to learn everything post the adults. In fact, the adults will download everything you know from their lips to yours, right?
Yeah.
In fact, if you were a little boy, you ended up doing what your father did. Good luck with that. If you're a little girl, you did what your mama did. Good luck with that. You married the marriage partner that they selected. See how post it was? You just were a victim of the customs and traditions of this culture, and you perpetuate them over and over and over and over again. Did that for many, many years. As we moved into the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and later the Industrial Revolution, Margaret Mead said we moved into the co-figurative society, where now young and old can read and figure out life together. In fact, reason became king in that period of time. Our nation was born in the U.S. Our nation was born during this period of time. Finish this sentence, Stephanie, for me. We hold these truths to be
self-evident.
Self-evident, yeah. We would have never said that 5,000 years earlier. You did what the king said and don't argue. Well, now we're arguing, right? So now you had a say in your marriage partner. You had a say in your job and career. You had a say in what you were going to do with your life and the values you embraced. Okay. Margaret Mead said way back 50 years ago, I think we're moving into a prefigurative world where, because of the rapid introduction of technology, even smart technology, she saw it even back then coming. I mean, we had Future Shock written by Alvin Toffler, and Star Trek was already out and everything else. She said, I believe we're moving into a world where the young will figure things out quicker than the old. And I see glimpses of that right now. So I am listening to the Colin Webbs who have ideas about how GM could be better, or my own children. I mean, this is stupid, but when something goes wrong with my smartphone, do you know who I ask for help? My son
kids,
and daughter.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. My son Jonathan fixes it in 5 minutes. And I say to him, how did you know to do that? And he says to me, how did you not know? I mean, that is the conversations that we have. Now, I'm being goofy right now, but you know what I'm saying.
It's real.
Leader, let me say this to you. Yes, you have much to teach them. They're going to have to learn a lot. Their brain isn't fully formed until it's 25, 26 years old. But listen to me. You ought to be listening to them along the way. So there's a reverse mentoring thing going on. You have something to teach. You have something to learn. Something to teach, something to learn. Something to teach, something to learn. This is the new discipleship, I think. because of the day we're in. Biblical truths are timeless, but some other truths are timely, and we're going to have to be listening. They may find out a completely different way to use technology to make sure the kingdom of God advances in our day. And it may not be me that comes up with that idea. In fact, don't look to me for that one. But I think it might be them. It might be your daughter, you know? So anyway, I just believe that's where we're heading.
And that's really good. What's coming to mind too is the book From Strength to Strength. I believe that's
Yes.
Arthur Brooks.
Yes,
And I'm
it is.
thinking just even about how there's that wisdom that's found as you get older, and then there's these strong ideas and creative
Fluid
thinking and
intelligence. Yeah.
exactly the fluid versus crystallized intelligence. And thinking about, and if you don't know what we're talking about, listeners, we don't have time to get into it. Google it, look it up. It's amazing. But that crystallized intelligence, what you've got to, crystallize is the older one, fluid is the younger one, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, what I sure I did that right. But yeah, as older generations, what type of wisdom do I have to share? And for those younger Gen Zers, what are some of those quick things, ideas, that fast thinking that I'm able to share? And how do we do that with each other? And I'm another thought too, because they are learning so fast, like you said, with Margaret and me, they are learning so quickly on so many things. And yet wisdom you can't get until you get a little bit older. Like wisdom just doesn't come. You can't ChatGPT that.
Yeah.
And so I think an important thing for older leaders is wanting Gen Zers to be teachable. And as you mentioned with Gen Zers, they're trying to trust these older leaders, but they need the wisdom that's available to them. Yes. How can a Gen Zer who just knows a whole heck of a lot of stuff train themselves to be teachable so they can pick up on that wisdom they so very much need?
Yeah. Let me share two things. Let me start with this one, though. I feel like when I think about my own children as they moved into adulthood, it did take a couple of skin knees along the way, meaning they try it out and they do flop. They thought it was easy to host that party, and it wasn't as easy as I thought it was. So the skin knee is a metaphor. I think we need to let them try it and not try to spare them from that skin knee. We need to do as much preparing as we do protecting. So experience is the best teacher in that sense.
Yeah.
But the other thing I would say is, I think we need to describe for them the difference between knowledge and wisdom, and say to a Gen Zer, I need the knowledge you have picked up on social media, on smart tech, on YouTube, on whatever. But if you don't mind, I'll share some stuff I picked up over the years, here working at this office. This is the 45th year of my career, Stephanie. I've learned a few things that might be applicable to someone who's half my age or even a third my age. So that's where this reverse mentoring thing comes in. Old and young get together, but both are mentors in different categories. That's where I would think our homework assignment lies, right there.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so much in what you shared, Tim, and I could ask 1,000 more questions. I won't. How can people find out more? Because I'm sure you've piqued everybody's curiosity right now. Where can they go? Picking up the book, certainly. The Future Begins with Z. Where else can they find out more about what you shared today?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I really want to serve and help. In fact, just a year and a half ago, I was with all the mission leaders of the Assemblies of God, and we had such a great conversation about this, because they were going, doggone it, I know they're the future, but they're not the present, that sort of. So the book can be found at thefuturebeginswithz.com, thefuturebeginswithz, or you could go to Amazon and pre-order anywhere. But if you go to The Future Begins with Z, you can get a bunch of bonus stuff for free, like 52 pages of bonus stuff that didn't make the book. And then just to find me, my name, timelmore.com. You can find my site, and there's free stuff there to download. And I do workshops and events if that's helpful on this topic, especially. So I would be delighted. Or social media at Tim Elmore. Love to stay in touch that way on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. That would be fun. Stephanie, I always have fun with you. You are a very fun person.
I feel the
good
same.
to knock these ideas around.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tim. We really appreciate you and all the great work you do in bringing generations together.
Yeah, thanks. Well, it's my pleasure, and it's my warpath I'm on right now. We've just got to get this thing right.
Amen.
Welcome to sandpaper.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to sandpaper.
Yes, welcome to sandpaper. I feel like that would make a good title for an article or book or something. I don't know. I kind of like that.
Right. Absolutely.
Thanks again, Tim.
Yeah, you bet.
Tim gave me so much to chew on today. Gen Z, you're amazing. Leaders, I think it's so important for us to understand and steward these young people well. You know, one of the things I think I'll be most chewing on is Tim's acronyms. They are the best. COPING, what a great way to remember the different characteristics of Gen Z. And I think my favorite one was perks. Let me see if I remember. Preferences, expectations, requirements, keys, salary. Yes. Okay, for real though, as you're getting ready to have Gen Zers join your team leaders, how can you use that to help you prep for that conversation and decide what it is you need from them and Gen Zers as you prep for joining teams, becoming missionaries? How can you think through ahead of time? What is it that I need? What is it that I just want? What are those and how can I communicate those best? You know, I think Gen Z is carrying something that we have not always understood, and it's a weight. As digital natives, they are exposed to some really heavy things, temptations that I don't even think we can begin to imagine, those of us of a different generation. But it's also important to remember that they carry something to give and to share. They have knowledge and insight and ideas that we don't have access to without them. And I believe when we lead them well, they can become some of the most resilient, creative, faithful missionaries we have seen. So I just want to encourage you to check out Tim Elmore's latest book, The Future Begins with Z. You will find so much more on what we talked about today. And if this episode helped you, we encourage you also to subscribe, share it with a missionary who you think it would be helpful to, and make sure to send us a comment and listen to future episodes. We are so glad that you're part of this community, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Hey, missionaries, I've got a question for you. How are your finances on the field? Also, are you feeling supported by your senders? At Modern Day Missions, we make it simple for missionaries to receive donations and for their donors to give. As the largest independent missions organization in the U.S., we process donations from more than 1,100 missionaries to and from countries all over the world, helping them get on the field and freeing them to focus on what they're called to do. And we also create and connect missionaries to resources that help them flourish on the field, like this weekly podcast, fundraising coaching, and our resource packed newsletter. So connect with us at modernday.org to explore our free resources and discover how we can serve you. We're so glad you joined us today.